Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The mayor of the French city of Riots near Paris decided to enforce a curfew beginning today. This decision is the first of its kind since the riots began on the 27th of October in the suburbs of the French capital. Today, a 60-year-old man died from his injuries sustained during a riot that took place last Friday in the northern suburbs of Paris. The man's widow, who was received by the French Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy, confirmed her husband's death.
The
French president's confirmation that he is determined to establish security did not deter the young rioters living in the suburbs of Paris. This was evident last night. Firefighters were racing against time to put fires out. Rioters set dozens of schools and buildings on fire. The young angry men also targeted symbolic institutions like schools and municipalities, but they seemed to target cars the most. Local residents woke up to images of burning cars. Some 1,500 cars were burned to the ground. According to some reports, more than 30 people were injured in sporadic clashes. After seeing these images, many people are living in fear and anxiety.
Since the violence erupted, I'm very scared, even though I've been living here for 40 years.
The deterioration of the security situation and the ongoing unrest started to negatively affect the lives of people in these suburban areas. For example, many stores did not open for business. They secured their front shops with iron gates. On the other hand, some merchants remained open for business.
Most incidents take place at night. I'm afraid that one morning when I come to my store, I will find it vandalized, burnt, or burglarized. Most shop owners do not have problems during the day.
Despite the overwhelming condemnation of these incidents, some people support these protests. Take a look at this Frenchman of Algerian descent who contended that he possesses college degrees. However, racism and discrimination closed the doors of opportunity on him.
In France, there is a covert racism, which explains why this intifada erupted. French immigrants are not given equal opportunities like other French citizens. They are forced to live in chicken cages, so France must now pay for its own mistakes.
The French President Jacques Chirac and his Prime Minister vowed to launch a campaign against the inequality of opportunities among all French citizens. They will also implement a giant economic project to improve economic conditions in the suburbs. Opposition groups are calling for the resignation of the French Interior Minister.
If the French government wants people to remain calm, it should handle the situation differently. First and foremost, the government must force the Interior Minister, who caused these riots and unrest, to step down. Second, French officials must draft a plan to improve living conditions in these suburban areas.
When are these waves of riots going to stop? When will the French restore stability and calm to these regions? Nobody can answer these questions at this time. Meanwhile, some people are proposing the redeployment of the French army to the streets, while others began to organize themselves into groups and mobs for self-defense.
French authorities announced that they have arrested at least 78 people following the escalating violence that began outside the capital of Paris. Central Command of the French police force confirmed that a group of youth set fire to more than 500 cars, the highest number since riots erupted last Wednesday. Meanwhile, French security forces are being deployed to a number of suburbs in France. Amal Sakhri.
For the 8th consecutive day, the acts of violence continued in the suburbs of the French capital of Paris, also extending outside its borders. The city of Dijon in eastern France and the area of Bougon in the south of the country witnessed riots as the French authorities arrested 78 people. The Central Command of the French police confirmed that a group of youth burned more than 500 cars, the largest number since the riots erupted last Wednesday. To confront this wave of violence, the French policemen were deployed to suburbs of France, where most of the residents are immigrants. Meanwhile, the Imam of the Paris Mosque in his Eid speech yesterday called for calm. Also, during his official visit to Paris, the president of Senegal, Abdallah Wade, said that they must put an end to this in what he described as the isolated areas, calling for assimilating the immigrants into French society.
Le dossier ou la question révélée par les émeutes dans les banlieues.
The current violence in France is not an issue of security or internal organization. It has nothing to do with organized crime. It is a cry from some who say stop calling us French citizens because we do not have our full rights as citizens.
The French government held an emergency meeting yesterday to discuss confronting the situation. The French president, Dominique de Villepin, met with a number of local officials in the suburbs where the confrontations are occurring. De Villepin and his interior minister, Nicolas Sarkozy, appeared as if they put aside their differences when they both announced in front of the parliament that the return of order represents the highest priority to them. According to analysts, Sarkozy, who confirmed that more than 100 people have been arrested, poured oil on the flames through his attack statements describing the rioters as scum. He also criticized local government officials for failing to contain these events, warning against the spread of further violence.
In Germany, a spokesman for the German police does not deny that incidents of riots in France have been transferred into Germany. This comes after two similar riots took place in the cities of Bremen and Berlin. The police announced that 5 cars were burned in a poor suburb of Berlin in the early morning hours on Monday. It added that there were no reports of injuries and that an investigation is underway to find out the cause of these incidents. A security source said that 3 transport trucks and an old building were burned in the Bremen port in northern Germany.
During his visit to the city of Muzaffarabad, the Pakistani president Pervez Musharraf said that his country delayed the purchase of 77 F-16 fighter planes from the United States. This was done so that Pakistan could put its efforts into assisting and rebuilding the areas destroyed by the devastating earthquake, which killed about 80,000 people when it struck the areas in the northeastern region about a month ago. Musharraf faced criticism a few days ago when he said that the earthquake does not have any effect over the extremely high defense expenditures in the country. President Musharraf urged the people to be generous in assisting the victims of the earthquake over a long period of time, as was done for the tsunami that struck Asia. Pakistan celebrated Eid al Fitr at a time when areas afflicted by the earthquake are facing tragic circumstances due to the delay in relief efforts. The Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz visited one of the camps sheltering the victims and confirmed the efforts of his government in working with the international community to aid the victims of the earthquake.
The Eid al Fitr celebration in Pakistan was transformed into a sad occasion, and Eid prayers were attended by the Pakistani Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz, along with the victims of the earthquake in the largest camp sheltering the victims in Islamabad. Aziz expressed his solidarity with the families of the victims and confirmed that they would help those afflicted.
We share their grief.
We share their grief. We are seeking to help them. With the unity of the people and their support, along with the support of the international community, we will be able to overcome this difficult situation.
The large camp celebrated Eid al Fitr despite the wounds and suffering of its residents, despite their knowledge that this Eid was not like previous Eid celebrations. The earthquake transformed their lives from stability to a life of homelessness and tents, far from Kashmir, which was described as paradise on earth. Their lives were instantly transformed into hell because of the destructive earthquake. At the camp, within each tent, there is a tragic story. Haji Muhammad, who lost his leg and whose son's foot is broken, is very sad over the death of his wife and the loss of his 4 children after the earthquake which caused their house to collapse over them.
My wife and my 4 children were killed, and my son's foot is broken, making him handicapped. So how can I enjoy this Eid celebration?
The children, who are the ornaments of life on earth, play and have fun in the camps. However, the earthquake left imprints of sadness on their faces because they are unable to forget the time of the collapse and destruction on their school. This innocent little girl congratulated us on the Eid, but said that this Eid celebration was the worst in her life compared to previous Eids because she lost many of her family members as well as many of her friends from school. Despite their sadness, the children were determined to sing for their guests who came to comfort them. The earthquake stole the happiness of the Eid from the children after they lost their parents and had their homes and schools destroyed. But they hope to find other people who will help them face life's difficulties. Sadiq Bilal, Al-Alam Television, Islamabad.
That the international community would do what it took to support Lebanon in these critical times. During an interview with Future Television, Feltman called on Lebanon to take advantage of its presence on the international agenda to be able to find solutions for its crisis. The U.S. ambassador insisted that Washington would not impose a mandate on Lebanon as other states did in the past, a clear allusion on the role that Syria played for nearly 3 decades. Feltman added that the U.S.'s role in Lebanon was a helping hand for the government of Lebanon to reach its objectives and undertake the correct reforms.
I think the President has been clear that we want to support the Lebanese people at a very important time in Lebanon's history. You know, the Lebanese people are designing Lebanon's future. The future has to be in the hands of the Lebanese people, but we recognize that you need support. I don't know how we can be more clear. We do want to see 1559 implemented. The principle in a democracy is that everyone is equal sitting around the table. And if one side is armed, they're not equal around that table. We expect 1559 to be implemented at some time.
The UN envoy in charge of overseeing the application of UN Resolution 1559 underlined the necessity to consolidate the sovereignty of Lebanon and establish diplomatic relations between Lebanon and Syria. In an interview with Lebanon's French daily L'Orient Le Jour, Terry Ward-Larson stressed that both countries had to agree on the demarcation of frontiers, as it was not a UN task but one for Beirut and Damascus. Larson did not specify a deadline for the application of Resolution 1559, but hoped it would be applied before the next Security Council meeting expected in 6 months. Larson hailed Hezbollah's readiness to exchange in a productive dialogue as regards to the resolution, although he stressed this dialogue should result in Hezbollah's disarmament. In the interview published today, Larson stressed that the UN would continue to discuss means to protect Lebanon and whether there was any need for the resistance. Larson also maintained that if the Taif Accords were applied, they would be in line with UN Resolution 1559. Israel started talks with the European Union yesterday on reopening the Rafah border terminal between Gaza and Egypt, while giving the green light for Cairo to supply ammunition to the Palestinian police force. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon reiterated his opposition to the participation of Hamas in the upcoming Palestinian legislative elections. He said his government would not cooperate to facilitate the procedures of the elections in the event Hamas participated.
Last week, the Israeli Security Cabinet approved a decision to reopen the terminal under Egyptian and Palestinian control, with European observers monitoring the crossing and real-time surveillance by Israeli cameras. Sunday's talks in Tel Aviv aimed at firming up the role to be taken on by EU representatives who would be stationed at the border. Chief Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat told AFP that Mark Otte, the EU's Middle East envoy, also met with senior Palestinian officials over the Rafah border agreement on Sunday. After talks with Erekat, the EU envoy was to meet with Prime Minister Ahmed Quraya and Planning Minister Ghassan Khatib to discuss the international observers at the border. Once the terminal was reopened, it would be the first time since Israel occupied the West Bank and Gaza Strip in 1967 that Palestinians would be able to enter and leave either territory without passing through Israeli controls. In a separate development, Israel said Sunday it would allow Egypt to provide the Palestinian police with tens of thousands of bullets in a deal to be financed by the United States. Wishing to remain anonymous, a senior Israeli official told AFP that Israel has agreed to let Egypt provide the Palestinians with ammunition in the form of bullets, but not weapons, so that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas would not have any more excuses to hold back from attacking what it called the terror infrastructure. The latest victim of ongoing violence in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was a 12-year-old Palestinian boy. Several thousand people, including hundreds of children, flooded the streets of Jenin yesterday for the funeral of Ahmed al-Khatib, shot dead by Israeli troops who allegedly mistook his toy gun for a real weapon. Several hundred children from Khatib's school joined the funeral procession, holding up photographs of other youngsters killed during the conflict, alongside banners reading, "Stop killing Palestinian children."
Iran responded to recent comments made by British Prime Minister Tony Blair, in which he accused it of interfering in Iraq. Iran's foreign ministry said on Sunday the claims were baseless and without proof. Last month, Blair declared that new explosive devices used not just against British troops but elsewhere in Iraq were properties of Iranian elements or of Lebanon's Hezbollah. Britain and the United States accused Iran of not doing enough to stop militants entering Iraq to conduct attacks inside the country. A senior British official last week also said there was evidence that Iran's Revolutionary Guard gave insurgents the technology used in a series of deadly attacks, which have killed 8 British troops in southern Iraq since May. Both the Iranian government and Hezbollah denied any involvement. The European Union was studying a call by Iran to resume negotiations over the country's nuclear program. EU Foreign Policy Chief Javier Solana said the EU would see what was new in the letter and would respond accordingly. In a move to defuse tensions over its nuclear program yesterday, Iran said it held UN inspectors visit a military complex and calling for a revival of EU talks on the issue. Earlier, a European Union diplomat claimed that the Iranian request was unacceptable since Iran refused to suspend fuel works that raised fears that Tehran would be secretly developing atomic weapons.
Israel is not planning to attack Iran, despite a call last month by Iran's president to wipe Israel off the map. That's the word from Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz, who told Newsweek magazine the military option is not on the agenda today. Mofaz believes the diplomatic channel is the best route to take. The Israeli defense chief said the question of Iranian nuclear ambitions is an issue for the UN Security Council to deal with. Meanwhile, the European Union said today it is studying an Iranian offer to resume talks on Tehran's controversial nuclear program.
We have received the letter, we are analyzing the letter, and we'll see what is new in the letter, and due to the novelties, if there's any, we will respond. But for the moment, we cannot want to say much. We haven't seen much new, but we want to analyze it in great detail. You know, the language sometimes is very complicated to analyze.
The Iranians are under an obligation to respond positively to the resolution of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency in late September. We look to them to do that. Meanwhile, there are informal discussions taking place with the Iranians.
In other action, EU ministers agreed today to launch a 3-year police training mission to help the Palestinian Authority create a more effective security force. The plan calls for assigning 50 law enforcement experts to advise the PA on how to staff, manage, and finance a police force. It takes effect on January 1st. In regional news, Damascus confirmed today that it had received a formal request from the United Nations Commission probing the murder of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. The UN investigating team is seeking to interrogate 6 Syrian suspects. Syria refused to disclose the names of the 6, but Lebanese newspapers claim the brother-in-law of President Bashar al-Assad is on the list, as well as the former chief of domestic intelligence and the one-time head of military intelligence in Lebanon.
The 20th World Mining Congress kicked off Monday in Tehran with over 1,000 experts from Iran and other countries at hand to discuss the latest developments of the field. Present at the ceremony, Chairman of the Congress had this to say to JNN correspondent on the potentials of mining industry in Iran.
There are very great resources, and it is very good prospect for the future of the Iran. Not only metal, ores, but also coal, hard coal potential is very high. My country, Poland, is very interesting in developing of the Tabas resources, the Tabas mine in Iran, and I think that Iran has very, very good prosperity as a mining country in the 21st century.
Iran welcomes foreign investment in its mining sector. In a keynote address to the 20th International Mining Congress in Tehran Monday, First Vice President Parviz Dawoodi said further exchange of expertise with the leading countries in the field of mining would play a major role in development of Iran's mining industry. The European Union has convened to study Iran's offer to resume nuclear negotiations with the European Big Three, Britain, France, and Germany, who had also earlier voiced their support for Iran's move.
The European Union once again disregarded Iranian cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency and announced Tehran should remain committed to its obligations within the framework of the IAEA. The announcement came a day after Secretary of Iran's National Security Council, Ali Larijani, sent a letter to the Big Three European foreign ministers. French Foreign Minister Philippe Douste-Blazy told a press conference, quote, "We expect Tehran to go on with its cooperation." British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw, too, said the European Union will study Iran's offer very carefully and called on Tehran to respond positively to the resolution of the IAEA Board of Governors. This is while Iranian Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki once again stressed Iran's undeniable right of applying nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Mottaki reiterated it was not Iran that cut off nuclear negotiations and that Tehran is committed to its obligations to peaceful use of nuclear technology.
أثار مسلسل الطريق الوعر الذي بثته قناة أبو ظبي خلال شهر رمضان.
The soap opera The Rocky Road, which was aired on Abu Dhabi TV during the month of Ramadan, received mixed reactions to its subject matter about religious extremism. For the first time, a soap opera tries to deal with this complicated phenomena. Today on Madar, we will examine the different public reactions to this soap opera, starting in Kuwait and in Morocco.
أحدهما في الكويت وثانيهما في المغرب.
To talk about terrorism, which was exclusively discussed in the past through the usual media, like newspapers, television talk shows, and news programs, is now at a turning point. The issue of terrorism is now being addressed through drama. The Rocky Road and other similar soap operas that were broadcast during the month of Ramadan reflected the reality that the Arab society is living in. It is a message from the creators, according to critics.
The Islamic terrorists, or what some call the people who went to Chechnya and Afghanistan, I'm giving you the different names used to refer to these people so you would understand what the film is about. These people are part of us, despite our differences in the way we think. Whether you support the subject matter or not, this issue must be addressed through art in an honest and intellectual manner.
Some believe that these soap operas were direct in addressing the issues of terrorism and Islamic organizations, and that the subjects being discussed are ahead of their time, considering that these issues have not been fully examined.
I am against making a drama about a hated issue that continues to be present, especially on TV or in cinemas. Perhaps it can be discussed in performance theaters, but there needs to be more time, years, before airing on television or the cinemas.
By contrast, the more important perspective is from the audience, who was receptive to the story of the rocky road.
It is reality. It touches us. It is life and what is happening in our countries. The soap operas were interesting. I learned some things about terrorism that I did not know about before.
The opinions about the soap opera, The Rocky Road, confirm that this soap opera made waves in still waters and touched upon a reality that exists in many Arab societies. For Al-Madar, Abu Dhabi TV, Kuwait.
In Morocco, as is the case in the rest of the Arab world, the TV series The Rocky Road was a big hit. It was produced and performed with a high level of intelligence and attention to detail. While the development of the film and its dramatic story unfolded, it touched upon sensitive and controversial issues which were presented with depth and intellectuality. The film intended to offer a recipe to religious clerics, scholars, intellectuals, and security officials on ways to root out extremism and terrorism from the minds of people. The Rocky Road hypothetically took place in an Arab city, and performers communicated in the formal Arabic language. The main objective of the film is to show that terrorism poses a threat to the entire region of the Arab world.
The most important theme of Rocky Road is that it is practical and logical because it reflects on real situations and incidents. The performers presented the story in an effective manner which made it easy to follow, thus influencing the audience. As head of a household, I followed the episodes of the film during the month of Ramadan because it warns viewers of the danger of terrorism in the Arab world.
Images of random killings, violence, and destruction, which are usually seen in the media on the news, were reenacted in the episodes of this film. The production of this drama was artistically coordinated and performed, making the message develop and flow smoothly and effectively. What made it effective is that it raises sensitive issues and controversy about the Takfiri ideology and its motivation and implications. It touched upon some of the reasons behind its spread, thus inciting violence, terrorism, and defacing the face of Islam.
I believe that dramas and films are capable of conveying a message of peace and relating an anti-terrorist ideology. The film talks about the threat of terrorism, which is plaguing many parts of the world. Its production, direction, decor, and the presentation of its performers were highly coordinated, a setup that we have never seen before on the big screen.
It was natural that the film stirred controversies about the word terrorism. Viewers were indifferent about some of the ideas, the problems, and their proposed solutions discussed in the film. However, viewers unanimously agreed on the importance of showing these kinds of dramas and films. They touched upon this critical matter, terrorism, and put it on the negotiating table of the international stage. It spreads the message of peace via the most popular and powerful media outlet, the TV. It appears that Arab TV drama and series, as the case of government and media anti-terrorism campaigns, took it upon itself to take part in an ongoing war against terrorism, and thus improving the image of Islam, the religion of peace and tolerance. For Al-Madar program, Iman Azur, Abu Dhabi TV, Al Rabat.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.